Hey, I see live on Facebook.
We are live on Facebook. But before we start the discussion, I want to make sure I hit the record button for posterity.
Yes.
All right, so we are live on Facebook. I am Ron Sneller. I am here with David Kinder, chartered financial consultant from Riverside, California. David, my man, what's going on, brother?
Hey, I'm just happy to be here. It's a early morning Saturday, 9 a.m. our time here, and well, I'm awake and I'm with you, but I'm happy to be here.
Well, let's address that. I'm in Michigan, which most people don't think of as the East Coast, but it is Eastern time zone. So here in Michigan, it is noon, the middle of the day on a beautiful summer day. So I'm not sure how many people on my end are going to be watching live. So we are recording this with the intent of replaying it maybe on Monday or Tuesday morning, so people can catch it if they're out and about right now, enjoying a summer day with their family, so on and so forth. So just so everybody kind of knows that. We do have a lot of people I see now joining the group from our different life insurance discussion pages, our financial discussion Facebook pages and financial groups. So that's awesome. Before we dive in, I have to do a couple disclaimers. Isn't that fun, David? Gotta love the disclaimers. Number one, we're going to be talking about a lot of different educational topics today, and wherever we may end up going, please note to anybody watching this, it is not to be construed as specific financial advice for your situation. We'll be talking about some very general things, but make sure that you are working with David or me or your personal financial professional, wherever you may be, to implement those strategies into your specific scenario to make sure that they're done correctly. Cool?
Absolutely, and look both ways before crossing the street.
There you go. And the other thing, as David and I talk, we're good friends and colleagues in the industry. We're probably going to be holding each other up like, hey, this guy's the best thing since sliced bread. But just as a compliance thing, nothing that happens in this meeting today is to be construed as a testimonial, because that can't happen either. So let's just make sure we cover that.
Well, it can't happen for you. It can happen for me, but not
That's
for
true.
you.
That's
Okay.
true. Okay, cool. Let's start out with this. Can you just please give us like a little biographical sketch, a little history of what you have done in the industry that's led you to where you're at today? Because you have worn several different hats and have a wealth of experience in the different positions that you've been in. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your history.
Well, quite frankly, I've really got to go all the way back to my high school days. I was a horrible student. I did not graduate high school with my class. I didn't believe in homework. I mean, it was bad. To graduate high school, I took what they call the California High School Proficiency Exam. 100 short answer multiple choice questions and 2 short answer essays and $75. Then and you graduate high school. It's a real high school diploma. A whole
Okay.
lot easier than actually going to school. But at the same time, like, what am I going to do for my future?
Mm-hmm.
Have no clue. And so part of that was thinking, I really should go to college. But I'm thinking, look, if I am failing in high school, why would I go pay to get my Fs? I'm just not going to do that. It didn't seem right. Didn't realize that college instructors are better. Had no clue. I finally figured that out years later. But I had joined a network marketing organization that had introduced me to a lot of personal development speakers. Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, Brian Tracy, Les Brown, Earl Nightingale, those kinds of people. Made me think bigger, that things are possible. And as part of that, I didn't do well in that group, but they introduced me to that line of thinking. And I got onto all these mailing lists, and I got introduced to today, if I was reading this book that I got in the mail today, it'd be a terrible compliance book. It wouldn't pass anything. In fact, the guy was actually eventually sued for mail fraud and convicted. So
Yeah.
go figure. But he was a part of a financial independence marketing group.
Okay.
And I'm actually still know the founder of that group. It was John Commuta.
Oh,
And so he's a financial author, and he had put together a network marketing organization to sell books and tapes and make people into financial independence consultants, to do seminars, to do personal debt freedom plans. I thought, that would be really neat. I would love to do something like that. So I was kind of thinking about some of those things, but I was still pretty young. and it seemed like life wasn't going my way. So I took a couple of years. I went and served a mission for my church. And so we've talked about some religious things off and on. You are of the Catholic faith. I'm of the LDS Mormon faith. And so I went and served 2 years for my church. What's interesting about that is that talk about one-on-one connections. You know, you're in someone's home, you're teaching them different things and helping them to explore their relationships, their faith and such. And well, after I was there for about 18 months, I broke my leg. Okay.
How'd you
I broke
do that?
my leg. Look, I was in Tennessee. Look, this California boy does not belong in snow. Snow is a 4-letter word. I don't care what you say. And my Doc Martens were well worn. And there's a snowball fight happening around me. Look, I tried to get out. I should have stayed in. I slipped on the ice, pop, crack, I'm down. So I'm like, oh crap. Thank goodness where I was at, the guy was an EMT before. So okay, they knew how to package me up a little bit, but we didn't know what was wrong. Finally, I'm transferred down to the missions office, and they're going to have a meeting without me. So I get to be alone in the mission president's office. They're going to have their meeting in the lobby. Like, okay, fine. And I see the transfer board, and the transfer board has every missionary's, you know, it's a 3x5 card, who's everybody's paired up with. And there's these dots in the corner. And they're filled in, and I'm starting to realize there's a pattern here. The filled in dots are how many times that missionary has brought somebody into the church. I'm like, I've been out here 18 months, and everybody comes out in different staggered times. I'm like, I've got the most filled in.
Oh,
How did that happen? I'm like, okay, look, we always give credit to God, but at the same time, God doesn't do it all by himself. He has to work with us. Mm-hmm. We help bring about many of the miracles that God wants to have happen. I'm like, okay, there's something here. And quite frankly, I loved it. I love that one-on-one interaction. I like listening to people, being of service. And so when I came home from my mission, I decided I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I still had my broken leg. So once that cast came off, they sent me home. But that was fine. It was honorable and everything, which was great. But I went across the street. I went into a Wells Fargo bank. I said, I've got sales experience. I've got management experience for my mission. I just called it that. I said, what do you have? And they said, well, you're overqualified to be a teller. I'm like, okay, I'm glad to hear that. What else is there? I got hired on as a personal banker, thinking that I could learn financial services, tie it back into that debt freedom idea, and be giving advice. Quickly found out really that banks aren't that interested in giving advice. They want you to sell product. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Nothing wrong with that, but at the same time, I don't care about selling product. I never got really involved in that. The best things I liked was helping people resolve their problems. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite experiences being at the bank, I had this young teenager. I call him a teenager anyway, but he was 18 and he had this credit card, and he was overdue, past due, over limit, all these things. And I'm looking at this, and I looked at his ID and saying, we got your birth date wrong. This credit card was issued when you were 17. So here's what I'm going to do. You pay this off in full. I'm going to remove this from your credit report because we shouldn't have issued this credit card in the first place. But you have to scratch my back first. Pay this off in full. I'll take care of it. Gave the guy a clean slate. I love experiences like that where awesome. I can kind of be the hero.
Awesome.
And so, but being in banking, it's not enough. And I'm running around like a chicken with his head cut off. But I'm looking over at the platform, and there's my platform banker having a cup of coffee with a client for like an hour, having a pleasant conversation, making twice the money. I'm like, I could do that. It's not that hard, I don't think. I've heard you can make a lot of money if you have a Series 7 license. So I've heard these things. I mean, I've had no career direction, no career guidance, but finally something happened at the bank where basically I had to leave. Yeah, just had to leave. And I decided my church has an employment office to help you figure out what would be a good fit. And I gave them my experience and something. They said, you know what? You need to go see the people at American Express Financial Advisors.
Okay.
Like, okay, I'll go check that out. Today they're known as Ameriprise, but back then it was directly tied with American Express. Yeah. I passed their initial assessments. I got my licenses in 3 months too. So I went through those pretty quick. I laughed through my Series 7 exam, but that Series 66 was brutal. Took me 3 times to pass that thing. I blamed the study materials on that one. But anyway, I'm still
because earlier you mentioned about not graduating high school in the traditional sense. I didn't know that. You're obviously a very intelligent guy, very well spoken. You're dressed a hell of a lot better than me this morning, that's for sure. I wanted to make a joke about that. You're dressed looking like $1 million, and here I am at my office on a Saturday in shorts and a t-shirt. So you're making me look bad. But
well, that's not my fault. But
so there's,
if I was doing paperwork like you were this morning, I'd be dressed for the grunt work too.
This is all about you, not me. But the interesting thing is, I mean, there's a difference between like traditional education and actual intelligence and being able to apply it. You obviously passed all your licensing and your securities tests and all of that. No problem with that. So you're able to get that done and do really well. So you kind of started your career in banking. Was that at the credit union?
Well, I went to the credit union later. I stayed with the American Express for about 3 months. Now, here's the thing. I always believe that birds of a feather flock together. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I want to make sure that if I'm going to tie my name to this firm, that I can believe and stand behind everything that firm generally is doing, Right. And what I realized, the more I did my research or reconnaissance, it's more like, they charge a fiduciary planning fee out of pocket to do a custom plan that all looks the same. Today, I would have looked at it a little differently, but at the same time, a fiduciary planning fee to sell, and they could actually call it the Happy Meal. So you get a variable universal life policy, a variable annuity, here's some mutual funds, and here's a disability policy. Now, you're covering a lot of bases.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. But I would get a commission on that anyway. I don't need to charge a planning fee, that I'm thinking of. And I don't want to be held to that fiduciary liability if I'm going to be doing all that just to sell higher commission products. That was my mentality at the time. And I didn't find anything that detracted me from that. The other part was I was in some training things, and one of the trainers said, the only things I know are on these scripts. And I'm like, you know what, you're scaring me. And I got the heck out. It probably would have been just fine if I had stuck around, but I didn't. So for the next couple of months, I thought, okay, I'm fully licensed, ready to go, not realizing that licensing doesn't mean you're trained and that firms want training. They want a track record. They want to see that you're a good compliance risk. Mm-hmm. That's what they want. And so I couldn't get any kind of other real position, but I was able to become an assistant to a financial advisor.
Okay.
And that was at the credit union. And it was a credit union I was already doing business with. I love that credit union. And I was with them for 3 years. So I was an assistant to one advisor. And then, I was married and we had our second child, and we needed to change our living situation. And so I got a promotion to be a junior broker to another advisor 100 miles away within the same firm. Oh. So I learned a lot from both advisors. I've always been kind of on the study side of things. What was interesting is that with my second advisor, look, the credit union did primarily investments, and I began my studying for my ChFC. I wanted to prove that I was worth promoting into the senior role. I wanted my own branches. I wanted to prove that. And so in addition to sales production, I wanted to make sure I could say I'm truly vested in this career. Didn't have a college degree. And at the time, the CFP board was starting to say, okay, you got to have a college degree to have our marks. And I'm thinking, I don't need your marks if there's something else. And so the ChFC was a perfect fit. Plus, I could pay for it one course at a time, and there's educational reimbursement from the firm. Perfect. Let's just do that. Took me a good 2.5 years to complete that course of study. Glad I did it.
Well, it's a very high level advanced course of study. Like I kind of like, I make the parallel that course it's kind of like a doctorate or a law degree in, financial services. Like it's very robust and very advanced, right?
It's very comprehensive.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is that it exposes you to almost everything in the industry. Now, it doesn't necessarily always go into the most depth of every single topic. You mm-hmm. need a whole bigger library for that. Yeah. But like, for example, recently I've met a gentleman, Kelly Smith. He's here out of Newport Beach, and he does ESOPs. Now, I could spell ESOP, and that's about all I know. But I could go back to my textbook and try to get a little bit more information. And right. That textbook only has a little bit more information. I need more information to figure out how these things work. But at least
like in the field of medicine, I mean, you can get like an MD, but then you're going to specialize in a certain area, and you need more in-depth training on a certain area to be a specialist, right?
Yes.
So I mean,
exactly.
So that's not necessarily a detriment. You just don't work in that area, which is
Right.
fine.
Well, at least not yet. Who knows what the future holds? But I like being exposed to all these different things. How would that work? Who is that ideal for? And how would I talk to that person to see how, so that's, everything in life, especially financial service, who is this for? Who is this ideally suited for? There's no such thing as a bad product. There is such a thing as an unsuitable product for the wrong person. So I always look at.
In your process, you're really big on not the product. You're about solving problems for the client, right? So can you speak a little bit to that? Because I know that's a huge part of what you do in your planning process.
Absolutely. And that's been a huge evolution from when I was at the credit union, because at the credit union, it's so easy. In fact, it's so much easier sometimes, because I was able to train my tellers and my bankers, essentially. Here's how you talk me up. And it's easier for them to refer than for me to self-promote. And so it's a whole different model than being in the self-promotion part of the business. Because self-promote, how do I promote my own horn without sounding like a complete doofus? For a long time, I never knew how. But back at the credit, once someone comes in, you say, okay, how can I help you? What's on your mind?
Yeah.
And then they tell you. And then I'm taking notes. Okay. And basically what it does is a suitability check. Well, tell me about your situation. Tell me about your life insurance. Tell me about your disability. Tell me about this. Okay. Tell me about your emergency savings. And I'm just collecting notes. Now, it's not the third degree, but I've just got to make sure, okay, based on where you're at, can we take you on as a client? Does it make sense? Okay, I got 3 ways we can work together: mutual funds, and mutual funds.
Yeah.
And this is the way the presentation worked. I said, okay, we have what I call naked mutual funds. Basically, these are the lowest cost way we can work together, but there's no additional benefits. There's no additional protections. It's just what it is. And we'll figure out an asset allocation that makes sense for you. The other one was mutual funds, but we put an insurance wrapper around it. That's a variable annuity. And the way that those work, you're going to insure your house, you insure your car, you insure your life. Well, we can insure your portfolio for lifetime income. And so, but those have higher costs because we're adding insurance. So that would be about 3.5% a year. Then we had institutional money management. This is where we're going to have these people managing your money on an institutional level, and we could do it in a strategic and a tactical way. Those costs are around 2%. So a little bit more than naked mutual funds, who's getting more service, but it's less than, because you're not having total insurance on your program. Which way makes the most sense to you that we should work together? And that wasn't really needs planning, but it was allowing the person to choose. So I wasn't making a recommendation. I was letting them choose what would they feel the most comfortable with. But today, what I realized is that there's always a context in the sale. There's a reason why people do certain things. And when I left the credit union, I was like, why do people buy life insurance, especially at a younger age? Why do they buy whole life or indexed universal life, which was barely coming into existence? Why do people do these things? And what I realized is that life insurance is a context sale. People don't buy insurance for what it is. They buy insurance for what it does within the context of the problems. And without the context of the problems, there is no insurance sale. Right. And that's how you serve best. You have to emphasize the problems you're solving. And once the problem is really realized and crystallized, you say, okay, but that's a problem. Do you want to fix it? And if they want to fix it, say, well, we have a way that we can do that. Let me share with you. And ideally, there's more than one way that we can solve that problem. But
I'm going to just butt in for just a quick second, because you're really rolling. But okay. This is a perfect transition. Thank you for where I kind of want to take the conversation next to what you're doing today, because there's been quite an evolution from when it was you doing mutual funds and variable annuities to what you're doing today with the Breakaway League. Now, the Breakaway League is they're promoting a new innovative way for financial planning, taking that conventional wisdom, because there's not much wisdom in convention, as we've kind of begun to learn.
Unfortunately, yes. We've done the math.
And so I've actually opened this Zoom podcast. I don't necessarily usually do that, but I've opened it for several financial professionals from our groups. And so there's several on, and they're probably wondering more to hear kind of what you're doing with the Breakaway League. So can we start by continuing that with the problem focusing on the problem to solve the problem and staying there versus focusing on a product. So what are some of the things that you're doing with the Breakaway League to help consumers identify their problems, stay focused on it, and how they're going to solve those problems?
Well, perfect. Here's the problem. The problem is the Breakaway League is a solution to industry problems, because the industry, unfortunately, we don't have great positioning. When I went to my first agency, look, I left the credit union because I wanted to learn more about life insurance. So I went to a local agency. Now, logically speaking, I mean, okay, I know common sense ain't so common anymore, but you would have thought that if you join an insurance company, it's been around for 150 years or so, give or take, that they would actually know how to sell insurance, and they would actually teach you how to sell their best product. The insurance industry is the only industry that doesn't know how to do that and doesn't do it regularly and consistently. They don't know how to do it. You're not going to get that from the home office. I think part of that was why the $1 Million Roundtable was formed. That's essentially a huge study group formed in 1927 with only a few producers, and they only allowed certain people who produced a certain level to join so they can exchange ideas. Because where else are they getting ideas from? People aren't doing it. But if I went to go sell solar panels, which here in California, reasonably good job, and I know a few people are doing that. If I went to go train for selling solar panels, they would teach me, here's our top of the line flagship solar panel, and here's why people should want it and why it's our best value. And then everything else would be a deviation from the best. But they would teach me how to sell the best. I went to this company, and they did not teach me anything. There was no positioning. They taught me, well, they had essentially outsourced the planning concepts. They outsourced it to software out of my expense. And I'm like, and then once I went and did the math on it, I'm like, this only applies to a certain few people. This doesn't work for most people. And I'm like, this is stupid. But I stayed there for 15 months thinking, I must be missing something. I mean, the best script that look, I got a page of scripts, how to make contact with people. The best script that I got from there was, I'm going to be in your area. I'd like to stop by for 15 minutes and show you the kind of work I do.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, well, today I'm too busy to bother with that. And if someone were to call me with that, I'd say, look, if you can't tell me over the phone, I'm not letting you waste 15 minutes of my time. I am the bad guy. If someone were to cold call me, I'm the jerk. Okay. I mean, theoretically, salespeople are supposed to be nicer to other salespeople. I've studied too much. I know what bad sales is. And if you ain't any good, I'm not letting you in. It's just not going to happen. But at that time, the general agent said, okay, here's who you should call first. Just call the people who would see you just because it's you. I wouldn't see me just because it's me. Give me a reason. Give me the positioning. Because and I'm putting together a prospecting course for NAIFA, which is the National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors. Okay. I just rejoined the association last month, and I'm going to get started with the Advisor Ambassador program. And one thing that just occurred to me the other day, if your positioning is weak, you're going to start at the bottom, and you're going to be trying to push uphill everything you're trying to do, which makes everything harder because your positioning is so weak. But if your positioning is strong, and I'm not talking about Ned Ryerson annoyance, I'm just talking about having a very strong belief. And if you're very strong, you don't sell, you're going downhill. You're going to sell like you're skiing downhill. It's going to be so much easier. There's no selling. You're just explaining and just showing people how to get what it is that you're offering. But our industry doesn't teach any of that. Network marketers do a better job than that. But it's all part of the words we use. There's another speaker in the network marketing industry. I still follow him, Tom Big Al Schreider. And he uses this example. And so, Ron, pretend with me a little bit. We're going to pretend that you're a woman because it's my story and I'm going to be the man here. And we're going to pretend that you and I are on a date, okay? And
sounds hot, man.
There we go. It's going to be hot. And we're in the Italian restaurant that's right off the pier. We're on the second floor. It's almost dusk, and the candle lit is there. And the waiter just took our order. We've got our bread basket. We've got our we got the olive oil and the balsamic there. And Ron, I look into your eyes and I say, when I look into your eyes, time stands still.
Now that's romantic.
That's a very romantic line. Or I could say, Ron, your face could stop a clock. Okay. The words we use are so critical to how we're positioned. I was just thinking the other day, some agents, and there's nothing wrong with this, but it does show what their results are. They'll have on their website a whole ton of insurance companies that they represent, and they'll have like 20 or 30 different names, as though that actually builds credibility. Looks like a used car lot. Imagine all the different cars you could sell. I could sell you a Pontiac. They're not in business anymore, but there's a Pontiac. There's a Chevrolet. Here's a Mercedes. Here's a Rolls Royce. Here's a Lexus. Here's a Toyota. I'm like, but what? You just got to peddle me this stuff? What's the value? What can I expect to get out of this? And for a company, a large agency, to want to have me sell their best product, they've got to sell me first. Because if I can't see the value, I'm not going to be very effective, let alone use the right words to be able to help people understand the problems and how I can help them. Which unfortunately leads to our industry often having the image of being used car salespeople, just pouncing on people, and whenever anybody gives them any sign of attention, that they're never going to let them go. And so we rightfully end up getting that Ned Ryerson image.
You know that it's a good podcast when you can sneak in a couple of references to Groundhog Day. Yes.
And we can make fun of it. We're not getting offended. Professionals never get offended, but I can use that and say, I ain't that guy. And I will refuse to be that guy.
So tell us, what are you doing with the Breakaway League? How is this process different than your insurance salesman? Obviously you can't in the next 20 minutes, 10 or 20 minutes, you can't go into everything, but what are some of the key differences that you do when you're working with clients?
Well, the key difference is the language that we use, but at the same time, it's not just the language. The language is how we deliver the service. Mm-hmm. But the question is we have to be convinced ourselves. Enthusiasm. Zig Ziglar teaches this. The enthusiasm is defined in the last four letters, IASM. I am sold myself. Mm-hmm. And until I'm sold myself, I'm just doing a facade, mm-hmm. And I'm not doing this in the best way. I'm just trying to make a sale, just trying to make a commission. And quite frankly, with that kind of motive, you really could be screwing people over. I don't like that motive. And the thing is that when the training is weak, that's all you're doing. If all you're doing is selling for your commission rather than selling to serve.
Right. So how are you guys different? What do you guys do?
Well, it starts back by you have to buy into the problem and the solution. 10 years ago, so I'm going to go back in time here. 10 years ago, I was down and out still, and I'm with the company I'm with now, just in a different contract. Mm-hmm. And I had a day off from the computer store I was working for. This was 2009, 2010, and I couldn't get a job anywhere, and I had failed out from that first agency. I'm trying to keep names out so I don't get anybody in trouble and identify anything. But I had a day off, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to pretend what it's like to be a professional and go to this regional conference that this company was holding. And I thought, okay, I'll probably get some product updates and something new, and maybe it'll be a motivational speaker. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe who I'd met. I met Tom Love.
Okay.
And I won't say I really met him, but I heard him speak. And what Tom Love did was he brought the greatest amount of clarity into exactly why he does what he does and the exact benefits that someone could have for buying his product. And he did it in less than an hour. He was entertaining. He was energetic. And I still remember his three buckets and coordinating retirement distributions within the tax code. And back then, it was just primarily the Social Security benefit. We've had other tax issues since then. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at this, I'm like, he gets it. That is the most powerful thing I've ever heard and seen in my life. And in my mind, I'm thinking, I don't think I can work with him. I don't know what I'd love to do joint work, but hey, the guy's out in, at the time, Detroit. And I'm like, what would it take to become like him? Now, also in that audience was also a colleague of mine. I knew Gene Mon, and Gene Mon was a past president of the $1 Million Roundtable.
Yeah.
And so Gene got Tom to speak the next year at the $1 Million Roundtable. So I made sure I got that recording and I got the transcript. So I had something more to study on him, so I could try to incorporate that.
And I've been listened to that talk couple, more than a couple times. It's pretty incredible what Tom does. He's an incredible guy.
Incredible. And it's so clear and no jargon. It's one of the biggest problems our industry has. We're talking a lot of jargon as though people understand, well, I got so much jargon out of my life that even if I mention something of jargon, I will automatically define it for somebody because I know that nobody understands this stuff. If we don't understand it, no one else is going to understand it either. So my goal is to just translate it to make sure people can understand. Because if anybody feels
you're getting a clap from one of our attendees on that one.
I love Jen. Jen's awesome.
Giving you a round of applause for that one.
The biggest thing is that if anybody feels silly or stupid or outclassed or not as smart as the other guy, and some financial advisors want to just sound smart, and they do it so that they say, look, I know what I'm doing, just trust me.
Right.
Those are dangerous words to me. Don't just trust me. What if I'm wrong? You know, I mean, I want to be sincere, but I also want to be sincerely right. And I want to make sure that we're buying in. We're buying into the problem. We're buying into the solution. We're understanding. This is about communication, not about ego. Mm-hmm. And I've heard ego could mean easing God out, putting me before anything else. And quite frankly, this is a service business. And you and I, we've heard from the same speaker, Van Miller. He says this is the greatest service business that's ever existed in the history of the world. And we have the opportunity to serve as many people as we want, and as long as we know how to do it properly. Right. And we could do great things for ourselves, but obviously do great things for our clients because we can serve more than one client at a time. And you know, Zig Ziglar puts it, and I love this. Zig Ziglar says, you can have everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. Absolutely. But we have to serve them in the way that they understand they're being served, not being sold. And I've taught other agents, look, if I use the word sold in context, sometimes I can substitute the word sold with being assaulted or even raped because of that's the way that they think of it. I'm like, that's not what we want to do. That's not what we want to be known for. And so as going back to the Breakaway League teaches better communication language. And it's not just what we do, but it's why we do it. Mm-hmm. Now, for a long time, I didn't know what my why was. I thought that it was just let's help people with this, as Simon Sinek would say, a just cause. Let's help them to get their income off the radar screen of the IRS using the tax code, using the tax code's rules, and we can help them have that result because of everything else going on in life. But Tom challenged me on this one. I'm now in the Breakaway League, headed up by Tom Love. He challenged me on this. We had our quarterly meeting 3 months ago, and he said, David, you've got your EOS, your explanation of services, but you don't have your why. And like, okay, so he challenged me to find my why. And I'm looking through my life. It's not just this industry. I looked at it how I was as a missionary, how I am as a parent, how I've been with my teams as I've been in management and such, how I work with other agents. I look at how I've been involved with scouting with those leaders, how I've been involved in my church, how I've done other things. I'm like, what's the common thread? And what's interesting is that now I know my why, and now I can do it on purpose, because as Simon Sinek would say, what you do simply proves what you believe and what you want to be known for. And so what's amazing is that Tom challenged me, and within 24 hours, yes, I had my why. I figured it out. And what it is I believe in championing the individual to help them realize the maximum potential in their lives and remove the barriers that keep them from having that potential in their lives.
That's powerful, man. That's powerful.
Yeah, and whenever I start really dwelling on it, I'm like, man, I'm going to start tearing up because that is true. Now, why do I believe that? Quite frankly, I ask myself why that's my belief. And quite frankly, I have often felt that I have not been championed by others. It's like I've often felt like I've been the one left out to dry, and I've got to figure things out. Mm-hmm. And when I see new agents that say, okay, you got a license, now what do I do? I'm like, oh, man, you have no idea the trouble you're going to get yourself into just for not knowing so many things. And so I feel bad for them, and yet I got to help them, even just to help them avoid mistakes, help them to hopefully get onto the path they want to serve other people. But my why is really help people. Jim Rohn also helped me formulate my why, their lives, not just their jobs. Help people to develop more skills, help people to get more out of life. And today, I do that just by sharing people, go check out this YouTube video, go check out this book, go check out this speaker, go sign up for this program. This will all help you. And I have so many people that have come back around and said, David, thank you so much. That's helped me. And what's even great is I've got some people say, I was able to help this person, and I closed this size of a sale. Thanks for your help. And wow, that's heavyweight stuff. You can't buy that with money. You can't buy that kind of influence. You can only serve other people. It's a beautiful thing. And since I'm talking about influential people here, there's another gentleman I'll say he's well known in my communities, Mark Mortensen. Now today, I knew him from church. So at the time, he was the president of our men's club, like an elders quorum, but it's basically men who are under the age of 50 unless they were in another capacity. And he was the president, and I worked with him in the presidency. Now today, we have a congregation and we have a stake, which is multiple congregations. Well, he's over multiple stakes. That's where he is today. And so he had a profound influence because we had something called home teaching. What it was, we have a lay ministry. Nobody gets paid in our faith unless they're in a full-time administrative position. And so we all check on each other. And we report back to make sure, how's everybody doing? And so many times we'd hear, hey, brethren, we need to hit 100% home teaching. Quite frankly, I don't care about the number. But what he taught was that it's the people behind the numbers. What's the story there? What is it where we can be helpful? What is it with the individual? How can we be helpful to them? We need that information. And so what is that 100% represents our commitment to those people. It's not hitting the number. The number is not the objective. It's the number proving that we care about these people.
Right.
And that's what he emphasized. And so ever since then, it's always about the individual. It's about them. It's not the numbers, but the numbers prove that I'm living my purpose, that I'm bringing that about. That was fundamental. And I've lived by that every time. Anyway, I know I've gone down a rabbit hole there, but I think it's been good.
Well, I know that developing your EOS and developing your why, a huge part of what the Breakaway League does.
Yes.
I've been attracted to the group, and I've attended a lot of the boot camps and the trainings and things of that nature. And I've learned an incredible amount about the industry and some of the great things that we can do as financial professionals. So for financial professionals who are watching this video, whether it's here live, whether they've joined the Zoom webinar, or maybe they watch the recording of it, part of what you do with the Breakaway League is helping to grow the membership. So I don't know if you would call yourself like a recruiter or a promoter, but can you just, for the financial professionals, not necessarily any consumers who may be watching this, can you just speak to why a financial professional may want to, whether it's dip their toe in the water by attending a boot camp, or whether maybe they consider joining, what's in it for them? Why would they want to do that?
If you want to reinvent yourself to no longer be an insurance agent and become a person of interest, you need to learn and get plugged into what we're doing. The neat thing is we have complimentary events. We have events at a cost. But the fact is, here's the deal. If you are introducing yourself and you're getting the response that basically says, oh, you're one of those, you're failing in your marketing. Okay, because if someone says, oh, I'm a realtor, I'm an attorney, I'm a CPA, I'm a whatever, you're not going to get someone's interest. And what we learn is that the words we use are vitally important. Now, I'm going to share it with you, what I do and how I do it. I'm going to share with you how I would introduce myself today, because I learned this from being a part of the Breakaway League. And if someone wants to up their game, I don't think there's any better study group than the Breakaway League. And we're all working on this stuff together. So some of us are still further behind. Others of us are pretty advanced. I want to think of myself as one of the advanced ones, but that's me, and maybe a little ego padding there. But
we just talked about a few minutes ago. You got to keep your ego out of it, man.
Got to keep it out of there. But at the same time, hey, you got to take credit where credit is due. Just got to be. Look, I'm the most humble guy I know. Okay.
All right. So how do you introduce yourself to people? So
someone was to ask me, David, what do you do for a living? thank you so much for asking, because I love what I do. I'm in financial services, but I work very differently from everyone else you'll ever meet in my industry, because in everything I do, I believe in helping people to maximize their potential and championing the individual and removing the barriers that keep them from realizing that potential. What I want to do is, I believe that you have the fundamental right to be the primary beneficiary of your life's work and of your financial retirement planning. What most people don't realize is that the way that they're setting themselves up for retirement, in retirement, they're going to be paid sixth out of their own money if they're retiring here in California, sixth. While the banks, the financial institutions, Wall Street, and the IRS, they have their hands in your money before you do. And so what I want to do is I want to teach the American taxpayer and business owner how wealth works and how the financial planning system has set you up to be paid sixth. And so we can actually show you how you can turn it completely around so you can be the primary beneficiary of your life's work, not those other guys. Mm-hmm. And if we do this right, we can actually help you to retire without even having to file a tax return in retirement according to the tax code. And if we structure this properly, we might even be able to double, maybe even triple your net retirement cash flow.
Wow.
Now, I don't know if we can do the same for you, but if we could, would it be worth exploring to see what the potential possibilities are? Now, I would say that just because, if I'm going to make a call to somebody that I don't know, I just want to see if they're open to a conversation. Mm-hmm. Okay. But what you'll notice in there is I'm not saying I'm an insurance agent. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a CFP, not an EIEIO. Nobody cares. But they want to know, what is it that I'm passionate about and why? And what's interesting is that for me, this is not just my career. Now this is a life's purpose and a passion, because I'm tying it into the root of who I am, because I found my why. And because when you know your why, everything you do simply proves what you believe. And that brings a whole new dimension to what we do in the Breakaway League, rather than just saying, well, I'm going to go out there and go set some appointments. In fact, I call it appointment selling. Another round of
applause, brother, from our attendees.
Appreciate that. So the whole goal is we can bring a whole new level of satisfaction to the position. Now, at the same time, what if somebody doesn't want to engage with me? That's on them. You see, and I shared this the other day with somebody. Look, you're either in the business of begging for $20 or you're in the business of handing out $20 bills. Mm-hmm. And the only difference is the words you use and how you're positioning yourself. My goal is to always be handing out $100 bills, essentially. I've got the value. You don't want my $100 bill? I guess you don't believe me that it's real. You don't want any counterfeit money. Okay, fine. That's what you believe. Then again, would you be looking to explore to see if it is real? If it is real, would you want it?
Right. Okay.
So there's sometimes there could be the question of credibility there. But so you have to be, are you willing to explore it? And if they're willing to explore it, we could take a look at that. One thing that's unique about our group is that we've got 6 CPAs in our group. And one attorney that I know of. I don't know if I've got any other closet attorneys that haven't disclosed themselves yet, but to know that our group, we don't just have financial professionals, CFP, CLU, ChFC, and all that. We have those people, but when you have multiple CPAs and one that's written a great book series, Confessions of a CPA, mm-hmm. Brian Bloom, I love that. Quite frankly, that work is so good because he finally equates on a mathematical level planning the way we plan it versus traditional planning. Mm-hmm. And what that difference would have to be. If you're going to do traditional planning, here's how much more you'd have to do in traditional planning compared to what we do. So we're going to redefine everything, but he equates it out so that you can generally have an idea. Now, it's sometimes harder to understand. I've created my own spreadsheet on the thing. That's how in depth I am on it, because I like being able to prove the thing. But at the same time, I could prove it or choose not to. The question is, how much do I like you?
Well, what you're saying right now reminds me a lot of, you wrote an ebook, and it's something like 7 legal scams that cheat the American people out of billions of dollars or something like that. I've talked with you about it. And I know that, well, let me just, I guess I'll phrase this in the form of a question. Based on your thoughts there, what do you consider to be a great hoax financially perpetrated on the American people?
For the American people, unfortunately, it's the 401k.
Tell me about that, because
The
I feel the
401
same way. To talk to our viewers, talk to the other financial professionals watching this. Why?
Well, there's a misconception that financial professionals are the one promoting 401k. That's not really where it starts from. It starts from the employer. See, up until the late 60s, your employer was your financial planner. You got started because of we'll look to Henry Ford. Henry Ford acquired a lot of labor by promoting the 40-hour work week, and here's some of the benefits and all these things that he was doing. So this is industrial age thinking. And so, back at that time, you would find an employer or you'd work on the farm. That's we were more agricultural back then, but you had a job, you work for 40 years, you retire with the gold watch and the pension, you'd be retired for 5, 6, 10 years, and then you pass away, you're done. Your home was paid off, according to what we would consider a traditional plan. Since the late 60s, and ERISA came into play. Now, ERISA, don't ask me what it stands for. It's an acronym. It's a government acronym, but it's a retirement planning set of codes in the tax code. And so I think it was Ted Bana. Is that his name? I can't remember his name.
Yeah, the father of the 401k.
The father of the 401k. He said, you know what? On top of the pension plans that people should be having, the highly compensated really should have, should see this part, this 401k section A or whatever. I know it's no 401k, but there's different letters in there. And so he looked at that part and said, let's create another retirement plan so highly compensated can defer money. The problem is it was so much lower cost, and people liked the idea of being in the stock market, especially through the 80s. It became the lower cost way for the employer to offer a retirement plan, but the cost shifted the risk. The risk now became the participant's risk to plan for their retirement, whether to enroll in the first place, the investment risk and the performance, all of those things. Now you don't have guarantees of the pension, you've got the 401k.
Well, the thing that's interesting about what you're saying, though, is that when the 401k first came out, it was originally designed to supplement corporate pensions, not replace them. So
right.
Like you said, it was originally designed to help high income earners be able to take a tax break right now, defer some of that taxation till later. But back in the 1980s, the top tax brackets were 50%, 60%, 70%.
Yep.
So back then, it kind of made sense for certain people. But
yes,
then these corporations realized, hey, these traditional defined benefit pension plans, they're too expensive. So It didn't take too long to where the 401k did completely replace corporate pensions to like where now in the 1980s, more than 60% of American workers were covered by a traditional pension. Today, that number is around 15%.
Right.
So
and
most
in
people
addition,
either have no pension or it's very small.
Right. And in addition to that, there became more legislation around these 401k plans. So here's the thing. There's something called top hat provisions in these 401k plans. And what that means is that for the highly compensated and the owners and such, in order for them to contribute the most, they have to have it balanced with the rank and file to be contributing to. And so there's this ratios, this means testing to make sure that more and more people are participating, even if it's just up to the match. And by the way, they offered the match as an incentive to make sure that you can contribute more. Now, I don't blame the business owners, because how many tax breaks are there for the business owner that's become an improvement? And it's a national pastime to hate to pay taxes. So when we think, hey, I can pay less taxes today, we're only thinking about today. We don't think about the future. We say, I'll take my tax break today. I'm going to get my match, and I'm going to be responsible because I'm planning for my future.
So why is that a problem? That's conventional wisdom. It's been around since the 1980s. And that's a big part of the problem that I have, is that the financial planning industry has been giving the same cookie cutter advice since the 1980s, where maybe it's not really applicable today. So tell me a little bit about that. Why is that becoming such a problem for Americans to follow that same advice?
Well, in 1986, Ronald Reagan passed new tax laws and completely redesigned everything. We got the Laffer curve. And so really redefined the tax brackets and everything. Now, since that point, what has happened to the national debt? We keep spending and spending and spending. Okay. So here's the problem. The problem is that the 401k plans have a tax lien against them for an unknown, undisclosed amount, because you could defer the taxes, but you're also deferring the tax calculation. And we don't know what the future can hold. And we know who's in Congress today. Now, I also have a certain belief. I think you share this belief, but I believe that there are certain political parties, and you could be on either side and look at it in either way, depending on what your perspective is. But I believe that certain political parties are looking at them. They want more power more than love of country. They're not being fiduciarily responsible for their spending. Now, granted, this year we've added at least $3 trillion in the past few months. Now, I agree with it because of this COVID stuff. Look, I get it. At the same time, it scares me.
Never
exactly. And they are milking this thing, and whoever you're watching on this, they're trying to pursue their agenda within that legislation, that government spending. And so the question is that, look, if you follow traditional advice and you paid off your home, your cars are paid off, and you don't have any debt at all, but you have all of your money in an IRS qualified or IRS regulated retirement plan, you still owe the greatest debtor in the world, because you can't even calculate what you owe. And it all depends on how you structure your distributions. And quite frankly, when we look at the safe withdrawal rate, this is a concept about making sure that you don't run out of money in retirement. And by the way, I still have to remind myself, success with the safe withdrawal rate means that you still have $1 at the end. Not that, and when you have a flattening curve in your statements, it's not a fun way to retire. You could call that the worry curve, because you keep seeing it going down, and yet there's nothing you could do about it. You can't stop, needing income, and you can't stop spending it, but yet it keeps going down and down. I mean, it's like being on the desert road, which we have plenty here, and you see next gas station 100 miles away, but you've got about a quarter tank left. You're like, I ain't gonna make it, but I can't stop, but I can't pull over either. So there's so many issues there, but you also can't fully enjoy your retirement if you're limiting yourself to just a safe withdrawal rate, because you keep worrying about running out of money. And so all of these things, and with the baby boomer generation, which the 401k and Wall Street has followed the baby boomers all of this time, we can look economically and demographically how they spend their money. Well, now in 2012, I think it was, the first baby boomer turned 65. Or at least 62, if not 65, to be able to claim Social Security. So that's now going to be another thing. Now, Social Security I don't consider it an entitlement. It is a benefit. We've contributed into it. The employer contributed into it. You are entitled to have it because it's a contract with America. So I don't look at it as, oh, this is more entitlement welfare spending. No, this is a program that you participated in. This is the pension plan of the United States. Everything else could be subject to debate, but that one. But the thing is that you paid into that. Now they're going to tax it, and you're going to have all this Wall Street volatility, because now Wall Street's getting into the fact that, okay, people are going to be taking more money out than they're spending, and we've got these politicians saying, okay, but we're still spending so much money. How are we going to balance this budget? Taxes at some point, something's got to give. I don't care which political party you're in. If there's the math party would say the math doesn't add up.
I mean, you're talking about Social Security, and Social Security is number 2 budget item in the United States. Medicare and Medicaid spending, and that's the number 1 budget item. And Medicare is projected to become insolvent in 2026. Social Security is projected to become insolvent in 2034?
Yeah, something like that. But you know what happens with those headlines is that something's going to get passed, some spending limits going to be increased, everything will be fine.
But the point being, though, how are we going to recapitalize that? Is it going to become a lot more taxes? Is it going to be lower benefits? Like, what does that mean for the average person trying to prepare for retirement? Are they going to do little things like screw with the cost of living rider? Like, what does that mean? I think for the average person, it doesn't work out too well.
Well, I don't necessarily know how it's going to happen on a massive scale, but here's the thing is that, okay, if taxes go up, which means Wall Street doesn't like that because Wall Street is pro-business. So I don't care which part you look at. When taxes go up, Wall Street will go down. What's going to happen then? Well, the contracts with America say, the government has to fulfill on its obligations. Well, how are they going to do that? Well, I guess things are just going to have to become more expensive. How? Well, maybe they're just going to have to print more money. And so is it possible to become a Venezuela? Maybe. However, the reason we haven't done that yet is because of demographic spending. We have more of an older population that may not be spending as much. So that's why we're not seeing a lot of that happening, whereas Venezuela, I suppose, it has a lower demographic. not sure about that, but I'm not the greatest economist.
Right.
I do know that I used to, when I was first at the credit union, my mentor was trying to say, read the Wall Street Journal every day so that you can learn about the economy. And what I realized is that, first, the Wall Street Journal gives me anxiety. I don't like reading it. I can't stand this thing. And he says, get an opinion on it, because he thought that the idea of creating clients is, I want you to know that I know. I don't know anything. I don't want to know anything. But if I follow what the government is doing, everything else responds to what the government is doing. So it's far easier to watch the government and who's in power and what they're talking about and how everything responds than it is to make up something like, okay, this business is going to merge with that one. That's going to create this new thing. I don't know what was it? T-Mobile and Sprint, I think they're merging. I don't know. Don't really care because that's a little happening. Doesn't affect the whole economy.
And here's the thing, nobody knows, right? And if they tell you they do, they're lying to you. That's the thing. So a big part of the
a broken clock can be right twice a day. So that's okay. But I'd rather be wrong for the client's benefit. That's my goal. I'd rather be wrong and the client win than I'm going to stake my reputation, my life saying I'm going to be right and the client loses. Mm-hmm. Too many of that kind of stuff going on, I bet, in other places.
Sounds like a big part of the planning process with what you're doing is to help people plan for the uncertainty,
Well, yeah, absolutely. Well, imagine instead of being a victim of the uncertainty, what if you could take advantage of it instead? Mm-hmm. What if whenever all this stuff happens, you've got this huge pile of money that, you can access at any time, use it, put it into the money, to the marketplace. You could, let's take a smaller local example. Let's suppose that you have an automobile shop or repair shop, whatever it is, and the company next door, they didn't manage their finances right. They're going out of business. You can buy their inventory. You probably buy it for pennies on the dollar, mm-hmm. and then you could do it. But if all of your money is in Wall Street, you can't do that. So having a reserve that you can always access that's not correlated, not tied to the market, so that when the market goes down, it goes down. No, we want that separate and safe so that you can take advantage of opportunities when they come up.
But the average American doesn't do that, right? The average American, 95% of people put all of their money in their 401k. And when the market crashes, so does their account with it. So they're not actually sitting on any liquid capital because, when's the best time to buy into the stock market? When it's high or when it's low? When it's low,
the best time is when you're thinking about it, unfortunately, because no one can time anything. I don't time a dang thing. I could barely time a watch, and I don't wear one anymore. But but the 401k has so many other issues too, because the 401k, if we're looking macro, the 401k ties up all of your money. You can't access it for anything you want to do in your personal life unless you take out a loan against it. Now, when you take out a loan against it, you're paying it back with after-tax dollars. Mm-hmm. Also, let's take an example. Like, let's suppose that your next door neighbor is selling their home. They've got to leave the country. Let's assume that they're not a criminal, but they're going to sell you their home for half. And let's suppose that they're going to say, look, it's a $500,000 home. You can take it for $250,000. I just want it sold to get it transferred. You can have all of that, but all of your money is in a 401k. And let's say you have $400,000 in your 401k. Can you get access to it? And the answer is no, you can't. How much can you access? Well, you can get a loan up to $50,000. That is the IRS maximum, or 50% of your plan balance, whichever is lower. That's what you're allowed to get access to. Or you can quit your job. That's the other way to get access to your entire 401k balance, obviously with no guarantees that you can be hired back. So the 401k locks you out. And of course, everyone would say, that's designed to make sure you actually have money in retirement. You know what most people do with their 401k? They change from job to job. We're not in the same job for 40 years in most cases. So we go from job to job. Now you have this window of opportunity where I can roll that money over, but you know what? I've got so much credit card debt. I want to get rid of the credit card debt so I stop paying interest elsewhere. But now we've stopped the lifetime compounding curve. And that's the biggest thing that I've seen. I've helped people to do their rollovers, and they decide, you know what, I got to take care of this credit card debt. And quite frankly, I saw the writing on the wall. I knew you were going to take care of that credit card debt. But then I've also seen people with $150,000 401k, they roll into an IRA to cash it out and to buy a house. But it's not going to grow the same way. You only have one compound interest curve, and the sooner we start it and the sooner we can use it to be able to consolidate all of your other spending and have it continue to grow as though you never touched it. That is far better and far more empowering than start, stop, start, stop. In the book, you mentioned my book, The 7 Legal Scams. And I talk about this. I actually have a calculator examples. We've all probably heard this. Which would you rather have, $100,000 today or a penny that doubled every day for 30 days? Ron, I'll ask you, which one would you rather have?
Do you want the answer that I know, or the answer that most people would say? I mean, the penny that doubles every day for 30 days.
The penny that, yeah. But however, up until about day 24, you're feeling really good with that 100,000.
Right.
But right there at day 30, it's 5.3 million. Now, no investment doubles every day for 30 days or 30 periods or 30 years. But I'm going to use it as an example. Let's suppose that five periods in, you stop, you liquidate. Where's the cost? The cost is in the back end. So you take off 5 years from the back end and you realize if you delay 5 years, you don't have 5.3 million, you have 167,000. So using that example, it's like that's where the cost is. It costs you a huge amount to delay the compounding of your money. Now,
so it's the opportunity cost, and most people don't think about that.
Right, because we're living in the closer period of today. Oh, I'm just going to rebuild it again. I'll get back to where I was. Yeah, but you lost the time. You lost the use of your money. You're not building. So the idea of getting on the wealth curve and growing it and keeping it growing and being able to access your money for opportunities, that's where it's at. And that's what I've come to learn. And here's the neat thing, the way that we do it, imagine if you become disabled along the way. Something happened in life, you got hit or you got a brain aneurysm, whatever it is, you become permanently disabled. My plan will keep contributing the cash even until retirement. No 401k plan is going to keep putting money in it for you. No IRA is going to do that. No 529 plan is going to do that. No mutual fund brokerage account is going to do that. Only the type of plan that we're talking about can help you with that kind of result. So even if you become disabled, the plan is still going to work.
Man, that's powerful, man. That's powerful. Well, listen, we've been going about an hour now. We're going to kind of
really?
wrap
Well,
up.
I haven't felt it a bit. So
I know it, dude. I know it. We could do this all day, but again, we have a lot of financial professionals probably watching and on. Just very quickly, what special opportunities do you see for financial professionals being able to help the American public, in the near future?
Well, I'm noticing that there's more of a trend from getting away from being a specialist, being a generalist. There's an evolution, I think, of how we position ourselves. And in the beginning, when we're an agent, we say, I sell insurance. You're known by what you sell. Then we get our securities licenses and maybe we get a designation and we say, now I'm a certified financial planner. We become an identity of what we want to be known by. Now we're realizing everybody's moving toward that identity. Now we're trying to get to differentiation. How are we different? And what is it we specialize in? And so I see we're not going to be trying to appease everybody with everything that we do. We're going to be looking at more, I specialize in this. This is why I specialize in it. This is why I love to do what I do. And being able to identify who you do your best work with and why you do that work with them, that is going to be the greatest opportunity to differentiate, because right now we're rather commoditized. All of our messages are screened by an attorney to try to keep the companies out of trouble, to preserve their reputation, regardless of our sales ability or not. And so being able to break out of the mold, that's our opportunity. And the Breakaway League is perfectly positioned to help people break out of the mold. In fact, if someone's watching this, there's theexplanationofservices.com. It's a course that Tom Love will take you right through step by step to help you develop your own explanation of services so that you can have more powerful language to help you communicate exactly who you are and the vision of what you do, not just I sell a widget and your perception of that widget determines what you think, how valuable it is to you. I want to be the one to frame that conversation.
Awesome, man. Awesome. We have a few people on. I mean, we have just a minute or two. If we have a question or two from any of the other agents and professionals who are on, if you guys want me to ask David a question, you can go ahead and pull it up and put it in the chat box. We got just a couple more minutes. So if anybody has something on their minds that they want to ask David, specifically, I will take a look at our chat box here.
Hopefully we don't have any trolls. I've dealt with some trolls in this industry before.
Well, everybody.
These look like the right kind of people. I like them. So
yeah. We have somebody saying, "Great job, David."
Oh, thank you.
Okay, that's from Gwen.
All right.
I'm not sure that I know Gwen.
You should. I think you should.
Maybe. Okay. I know Jen, if it's the Jen I'm thinking about. I know Ken. We got Gwen, Jen, and Ken all on my list. How about this one? What industry development are you most displeased with?
Right now, the biggest one that I don't like for consumers is the fiduciary rulings. You cannot regulate ethics. It cannot be done. You have to be the right person who takes care of people with the knowledge and the proper intentions for those people. You can't regulate.
Wait. So you're saying that if I go take a class and if I'm not ethical, all of a sudden the class is going to turn me into an ethical person? Is that that's not going to work?
Not that I've seen. Look, I've got this great certificate, National Ethics Association. This proves that it only says that I'm committed to it. I'm paying attention to it. But right. I could use that and say, I'm ethical and really screw you behind the back. That's not who I am. But the thing is that the industry says, okay, here's ethics training. You got to be ethical. I'm thinking, you know what? Every other criminal, look, Bernie Madoff was a fiduciary who's supposed to hold their client's interests ahead of his. He was not an ethical person. Right. And there's been other Ponzi schemes out there. Now, that's not to say that everybody that has an investment license is going to be a criminal. No, obviously not. And I don't blame them for promoting the fact that they're a fiduciary securities advisor. But a lot of this government regulation stuff, I think it just gets in the way. It muddies the waters. It creates more red tape for the people who are trying to do a good job. Yeah. It's just like, and quite frankly, and you and I, we could probably talk all day about this. It's kind of like the gun safety rules and gun control. All it seems to do is punish the people who are good to delay them from being able to exercise the Second Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I do agree there needs to be some safeties in there, but at the same time, the criminals create their own bombs. Criminals create their own stuff. That's why they call it the black market. There's, anybody who's not ethical doesn't want to follow the rules. There's a way around that they'll get what they want. Right. So only the people who want to follow the laws and be legal and such, they're the ones that get hurt by a lot of that regulation.
Yeah, I got another question coming in here. So is the Breakaway League mostly a study group? Is it a place to learn best practices from great people? What all? It sounds like they're asking what's all involved if someone was to join the Breakaway League.
Great question.
I would say yes and yes, but there's a lot more involved. So first of all, is it mostly a study group, and can it be a place where you're learning best practices from great people?
Yes, absolutely. But I also look, if you get onto our introductory webinars, you get an introduction as to what we're all about. And in fact, on August 13th, I'll be promoting this. We have Brian Bloom doing our introductory webinar. I haven't seen him do that yet, and he's the author of The Confessions of a CPA. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he is going to help introduce the Breakaway League and what we believe. Mm-hmm. We also have the boot camps, which are fantastic value. You've been on there at least once, if not a couple of times, and I've still learn from them.
I've done multiple times. In fact, I think because the information is so awe-inspiring, I mean, it's just like a complete paradigm shift. And I'm like, holy cow, it's a lot to take, even for a trained financial professional. Yes. Uh-huh. That I've done the same boot camp multiple times and just kind of like built on and taken my knowledge to like the next level and like, built on what I learned before. So, and I paid both times and it was absolutely worth it. Yes,
absolutely. What's interesting is that, the first time it's the fire hose. The second time you're like, okay, I need to make sure I get clarity on these other 2 points. Mm-hmm. And you still leave there with a headache, but it's a good headache. You're like, I got my value out of it, but I'm overwhelmed. And I still got to go. And even for me, I still get that.
So I know that the boot camps are like open to any professional who may want to learn about it. But what if somebody wanted to join the Breakaway League? Can they remain with their current firm, would they have to join like a certain company? And that may be something that you would handle with, an interested party one-on-one. That might be just better to talk about there.
The strategies that we promote in the Breakaway League, we work with a company that has built their products for the ground up to serve our philosophy. Right now, that company is Ohio National. Now, if that should ever change, great. We'll figure that out later. But right now, Ohio National is the company that we work with every time. Gotcha. Unless there's some reason not to. Like the state of New York, I think we work with Mass Mutual at that point because we don't do business. Ohio National does do business in Ohio, in New York. But getting back to being a member of the Breakaway League, and there's different ways to join, but the Breakaway League is about skill refinement and applying the things. It's an activity accountability. In fact, Tom has this group called the Tough Love Group, trademark pending, which is a great term, but that's about the activity level, making sure we're actually applying these things and promoting who we are and what we do, getting into positions where people ask us, what do we do for a living? So that's part of it. So it's applying everything. So unlike the boot camp is knowledge. Tom gives us everything that he knows. He gives us everything in the kitchen sink and then some. But once we're in there, it's more about skill development. How do we refine ourselves? How do we take advantage of opportunities that are currently in the news? How do we take advantages of things, of different talking points? It is a study group, but it's also accountability. We also praise and promote each other. And we give each other a hard time too. So, you know when you're on Tom's good side when he starts calling you an ass. I mean, it's just true.
And then as a final wrap up, do you have any just general last words of wisdom or a personal motto that you can leave us with to inspire us for our day and our upcoming week?
Oh, great. You're gonna throw me on that one. I don't know, but all I could say is that for me, I love trying to elevate the conversations that financial professionals are having. I see all the statistics from LIMRA, which is the Life Insurance Marketing and Research Association. People aren't buying enough life insurance. Why? We don't have the right conversations with people. We don't show people what's in it for them. And life insurance, people already have their own idea what they think it is. They have no idea everything it can do and do it better than anything else you thought you could do it with. The conversation isn't there. And if we can elevate our knowledge, that's the first part. I went to that first agency. I know, look, if I was going to compare my skills on a scale of 1 to 10, right now I'd be 8, 9, or 10. Back then I was a -1. And I had my, and back then, Series 7, 66, insurance, ChFC. I came in there fully loaded, ready to go. They couldn't train me. And it's so sad. And so
you had all the knowledge up here, but they couldn't help train you into how to take that knowledge out into the world, into the community, talk with consumers in a way that would help consumers understand and make a decision.
Which is why so many people say, I'm smart. You should just trust me. I'm a ChFC. I know stuff. You could trust me to help you with it. And they're not articulating value. They're just trying to showcase that they're smart. Right. So what? I had a fun discussion with a doctor on a thread the other day and said, look, nobody cares that you're a doctor. Nobody cares except the people that sold you the degree, the people that financed that degree, and the fact that you bought it. It's a great accomplishment. But in our business, nobody cares about that. Only thing that people care about is what's in it for them. Why should they engage with you? And if we can elevate that conversation as an industry, our whole industry benefits. Unfortunately, we've got certain financial entertainers out there that detract from that. We have a whole organization, and I hate saying this, but they're kind of industry trolls, and they spoil the conversation. But here's what I give them credit for. They have a mantra, they have a why, and that's why they're doing better in getting their message out, and we are often on the defense. So
and you had to start an entirely new Facebook discussion group just to get away from these trolls.
As part of, look, I blocked a whole bunch of them personally, but but the thing is that, but here's the thing, why are they such a problem? The problem is they know their why. Their why was, let's look at A.L. Williams. His story was his dad passed away, had a life insurance policy that should have been higher because he believed that if he would have been sold term instead of whole life, there would have been far better benefit for his family. I don't disagree with that. At the same time, they say buy term and invested efforts. It's always the best way to go. Well, Not if I show you according to the tax code, but I'll let you believe that for a little bit. Then we got Dave Ramsey, who says, you could get 12% a year rate of return. Well, that guy's not regulated. Nobody has to audit his advice. If I say that, I have a problem. I'll get an E&O claim.
Well, because it's not true, I could quickly show anybody on a S&P 500 calculator that over the last 20 years, from January 2000 to where we're at today, it's less than 4% what the S&P 500 has returned. And even if you reinvested all dividends, it's still less than 5.5%.
It's still not there.
You talked about outdated advice. Guess what? In the 1980s, when the baby boomers were in their peak working and earning years, and the 401k just came out. So for the first time, the average guy is pouring all this money into the stock market. Guess what? We were growing like crazy. And you could get a 12% return in the 80s. In the 90s, when we had the technology boom.
And part of that, think about the supply and demand in Wall Street. All these millions of people putting money in, they're buying more and more securities, which is driving the price up.
Yes.
The 401k built that up just because of participation. But with all of that, the thing is that one industry group, they recruit people like mad, but they have their why and they articulate their message. They're all single to a purpose. The rest of our industry doesn't do that. The rest of our industry says, I'm David Kinder with New York Life. Nobody cares. And unless they've dealt with New York Life in a positive way, they're not going to know. At least any agent that is saying, okay, well, that's all nice and good, but help me with where I'm at now. I would say, look, introduce yourself this way. I'm David Kinder. I'm with New York Life. What you probably don't know about New York Life is how we help people to do this, this, and this. So you can take control of the conversation. So you can showcase yourself. That's just a simple way.
We got a comment here from Ken who says, one Monte Carlo simulation is all that's needed to prove buy term and invest the difference wrong. When someone says they have an advisor, I say, bring them with, and I'll put them on the spot and ask if they're okay with putting them in a plan with a 20% failure rate. Statement, not a question. And then it looks like it's sorry, not sorry. One of those kind of things. Well, David, listen, man, this has been a great conversation. We went way longer. I'm sorry to keep you so long. I figured we'd be done in about an hour. I've abused your time, but thank you so much for hanging in there with me and for all of the great work that you do with the Breakaway League, with all the people that you coached and mentored. I met you about a year ago. You were so generous to give me your time, like over the phone, so many conversations to teach me. Because I had worked just in a smaller captive company for my entire career, taught me so many things that I had no idea about. And now I've kind of grown and have recently started my own financial business where I do insurance and financial advice and retirement and investments, like just so much other stuff that's out there that I could do. So I could never thank you enough for your influence in my life. And every time I have a question, you're like, hey, here's an article that perfectly addresses it. Hey, here's a YouTube video that perfectly addresses it. Hey, here's this, here's that. So my brother, I am forever indebted to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning for everybody.
Well, thank you. And believe me, it's self-serving. I love it. And you've been a great student, so to speak. So
thanks, man. Have a great rest of your weekend. Go enjoy that nice weather. All right.
Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.